The bell rang, a sharp metallic sound that echoed down the long marble corridors of Starlight High. It was the end of fourth period, and the hallway erupted into chaos, laughter, footsteps, the clang of lockers slamming shut. Miss Aisha, clutching her register and a few books close to her chest, stepped out of class with a polite smile that masked her exhaustion. It had only been her 5th day as the new English teacher, yet she already felt the weight of curious eyes and whispered gossip trailing behind her. Students respected her quiet poise and graceful confidence, but one name kept surfacing in murmured warnings: Ryan Malik, the principal's son. He was the kind of boy teachers feared to discipline and students feared to cross. With his expensive sneakers, careless grin, and the kind of arrogance that came from knowing he was untouchable, Ryan ruled the school's social halls like a prince without a crown. As Aisha walked toward the staff room, she noticed a small group of boys leaning lazily against the wall near the science lab. The loud laughter among them drew glances from passing students. Ryan stood in the middle, his posture relaxed but eyes sharp, watching her approach as if waiting for a performance. His friends elbowed each other and snickered. "Good afternoon, miss," one of them called out mockingly. Aisha didn't slow her steps. "Good afternoon," she replied softly, her tone neither friendly nor afraid. But as she passed, Ryan's smirk deepened. "Hey, Miss Perfect," he said, his voice laced with mischief. "Heard you've been trying to teach my class discipline. You really think you can fix this place?" She paused just long enough to glance at him. "I teach English, not miracles," she said, her voice calm but cutting. The boys laughed, except Ryan. Something about her composure irritated him. He was used to people reacting, anger, fear, submission, not this quiet strength. He straightened up and followed her a few steps. "You shouldn't talk like that to your boss's son," he said. "You're a student, not my boss," she replied, still walking. He felt his pride flare. The corridor had gone quieter now, other students slowing their pace to watch the confrontation unfold. Ryan's friends stayed back, smirking, waiting to see how far he'd go. "You think you're brave?" he asked, his tone darker now. "You don't know who you're talking to." Aisha stopped. Slowly, she turned to face him. Her expression didn't change, no anger, no fear. Just calm defiance. "Then maybe it's time someone told you who you're talking to," she said softly. For a split second, the air hung still between them. Ryan's jaw tightened. He had never been challenged like this, least of all by someone new, someone who hadn't yet learned the unwritten rules of Starlight High: don't humiliate the principal's son. And then it happened. In a reckless flash of temper, Ryan reached out and grabbed her arm. The sharp rip of fabric tore through the silence like a scream. The delicate cotton of her sleeve gave way, the tear running across her shoulder. Gasps filled the hall. Books clattered to the floor. Aisha froze for a moment, her heart hammering, not from fear but from disbelief. The laughter that had buzzed moments ago died instantly. Ryan's grip loosened as he realized what he'd done. His friends stepped back, wide-eyed. Students at the other end of the hall whispered, some holding their hands over their mouths. Aisha slowly looked down at the torn fabric, then back up into his face. Her gaze locked onto his, steady, unflinching. For the first time, Ryan felt small under someone's eyes. His smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. Without a word, she stepped closer. Each tap of her heel echoed sharply on the floor. The scent of chalk and perfume lingered between them as she stopped just inches away. He could see the calm fire in her eyes, not the kind that burns wild, but the kind that burns deep, controlled, dangerous. She leaned in slightly, her voice low enough that only he could hear. The corridor, though crowded, felt completely silent. "Do you really think," she whispered, "that your mother would be proud of this?" The words hit like a stone dropped into deep water, slow, sinking, unstoppable. Ryan's breath caught. His throat tightened, but he couldn't speak. His mother. The word alone made his heart twist. She had passed away 2 years ago, the only person who could tame his arrogance, who had always told him, strength doesn't mean power, Ryan. It means kindness. Her name had become a wound he never touched, a memory buried under the armor of his ego. And now this woman, this teacher he barely knew, had reached straight into that wound with nothing but a whisper. Ryan's fingers twitched at his side. The hallway blurred for a moment as guilt rushed in, hot and suffocating. He took a step back, his voice caught somewhere between apology and panic, but no words came out. His friends, realizing the gravity of the moment, looked away uncomfortably. Aisha straightened her torn sleeve, her expression unreadable. She bent down, picked up her books, and adjusted the register under her arm. Not once did she raise her voice. Not once did she glance toward the crowd. She simply turned and walked away, her calm steps echoing louder than any punishment. Students parted silently to make way for her. Some whispered in awe, others stared at Ryan, whose proud shoulders now seemed heavy, his gaze fixed on the floor. The tension hung in the air like smoke after a fire. When she disappeared around the corner, only then did Ryan finally exhale. He pressed his palms against his face, his pulse still hammering. For the first time in his life, he felt something more powerful than anger, shame. He wanted to chase after her, to say something, to fix the unbearable silence she'd left behind. But the words she'd whispered replayed in his mind again and again. Do you really think your mother would be proud of this? And every time he heard it, his body stiffened. Because he knew the answer. As the last of the students drifted away, Ryan stood alone in the corridor, the torn threads of her shirt still trembling in his fingers. The same corridor that had once been his kingdom now felt like a courtroom, every wall judging him in silence. For the first time, the principal's son wasn't feared. He was simply, and painfully, human. Evening settled over Starlight High like a heavy sigh. The corridors that had once been alive with chatter were now empty, silent except for the hum of the old ceiling fans and the rhythmic ticking of a clock somewhere deep in the building. The golden light from the setting sun spilled through the windows, painting long shadows across the polished floor. Inside the principal's office, the air was thick with tension. Mr. Malik sat behind his desk, the top stacked neatly with files and the school emblem gleaming on a brass nameplate in front of him. His jaw was clenched, fingers drumming impatiently against the wood. Across the room, Miss Aisha stood near the door, her torn sleeve now repaired with a discreet safety pin. She looked calm, but her posture carried quiet steel. He adjusted his glasses and spoke, his voice cold and deliberate. You should have come to me directly, Miss Aisha. You didn't have to create a scene in the middle of the corridor. Her expression didn't waver. I didn't create the scene, sir, she said evenly. Your son did. The principal's eyes hardened. Watch your tone. He may have made a mistake, but he is still a student, and my responsibility. Aisha's voice remained steady. And I am a teacher, your responsibility too. I came here to educate, not to be humiliated in front of students. He leaned back, crossing his arms, his tone sharpening. You're new here. You don't understand how things work. My son is human, she interrupted softly, but firmly. Not royalty. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. The ticking of the clock filled the room like a heartbeat. Mr. Malik's nostrils flared, his pride wrestling with reason. For years, he had protected his son from consequences, blinded by the fear of losing him the way he had lost his wife. Ryan had become reckless, arrogant, yet fragile beneath it all, a mirror of his father's grief disguised as authority. Before he could reply, the office door creaked open. Ryan stepped in, his usual swagger replaced with something uncertain. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shoulders slouched. The playful smirk that always danced on his lips was gone. Dad, he said quietly. Mr. Malik frowned. Not now, Ryan. We're having a discussion. I need to say something, Ryan said, his voice low but urgent. He turned to Miss Aisha, unable to meet her eyes at first. I'm sorry. The words hung in the air, fragile but real. Aisha looked at him for a long moment, searching for sincerity in his face. She found it, the trembling lip, the lowered gaze, the guilt heavy in every breath. Apologies mean something only when they change behavior, she said softly. I know, Ryan whispered. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. I didn't know who you were, I didn't know about her. Mr. Malik's brows furrowed. Her. What are you talking about? Ryan turned to his father, his voice breaking slightly. She knew Mom. The principal's pen slipped from his hand. For a moment, his polished composure cracked. What? He asked, barely above a whisper. Aisha took a quiet step forward. Years ago, before she passed, your wife volunteered at a literacy program I was part of, she said gently. She taught us to read poetry, to speak with kindness even when we were hurt. She was remarkable. Mr. Malik's eyes softened with surprise and pain. The name of his late wife had not been spoken in that office for years, yet hearing it now felt like a door opening after a long winter. Ryan looked at her again, voice trembling. When you said that sentence about whether my mother would be proud, he stopped, the memory tightening his throat. I froze. Because I knew she wouldn't have been. The principal's head bowed slightly. The weight of his son's words hit harder than any reprimand. He looked at Aisha, realizing now that this wasn't about authority or school politics, it was about a lesson neither he nor his son had learned in years. Aisha stepped closer to Ryan, her tone gentle but firm. Ryan, your mother wanted you to be strong, not cruel. Power doesn't come from being feared. It comes from being respected. Remember that. Ryan nodded, his voice barely audible. I will. For a long moment, silence wrapped the room in a kind of still peace. Outside, the last streaks of sunset faded into dusk. A faint wind stirred the curtains, brushing against the desk where a framed photo of Mr. Malik's late wife sat hidden behind a stack of files. He glanced at it now, the image of her smiling face catching the dim light, and something inside him broke quietly. He exhaled, slow and heavy. Miss Aisha, he said finally, his voice softer, almost weary, I owe you an apology as well. For what my son did, and for what I failed to see. Her expression warmed slightly, though her eyes still carried the same strength. Apology accepted, sir, she said. But I'd prefer you show it by changing how things work here. No student should feel untouchable because of their last name. Mr. Malik nodded slowly, the truth of her words sinking in like rain into dry earth. You're right, he admitted. You have my word. Ryan stepped forward again, hesitant but sincere. Miss Aisha, he said, I'll make it right. However I can. She looked at him, her voice soft but unwavering. Start by treating others the way you want your mother to be remembered. He blinked back tears and nodded. I will. I promise. The tension in the room began to dissolve, replaced by a fragile sense of understanding. The air felt lighter, like the first breath after a storm. Aisha gathered her books from the chair beside her. Good night, sir. Good night, Ryan. She turned toward the door, her silhouette framed by the soft amber glow of the hallway lights. Her steps echoed down the corridor, fading into the quiet evening. When she was gone, Mr. Malik turned to his son. She reminds me of your mother, he said quietly. Ryan sat down, his eyes on the floor. I know. That's what scared me. Mr. Malik looked at him, seeing not the arrogant boy who once ruled the school halls but a young man suddenly aware of his reflection. He reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. Maybe it's time we both remembered what she stood for. Outside, the sky turned deep violet. The school grounds were empty, except for the soft rustle of leaves and the hum of the streetlights flickering on one by one. Aisha walked through the gate, her scarf fluttering in the evening breeze. She paused for a moment, glancing back at the building behind her. A faint smile touched her lips, not of triumph but of quiet peace. For her, it wasn't revenge or victory. It was justice delivered with grace. Inside, Ryan stood by the window, watching her leave. The same corridor where he once stood proud and untouchable now felt sacred, a place where one whispered sentence had changed him forever. And though he couldn't hear her voice anymore, her words stayed with him, repeating in the stillness like a promise he would spend his life trying to honor. Respect isn't something you demand, it's something you earn.